for a good part of the chapter. I've done my best to recreate this for English enjoyment. If we could kindly turn the lights, can someone turn the lights off so we can see a little more clearly? You just finished this chapter, correct? So everybody should know all of this. Can anyone tell us briefly the story of Satyabhama, who was accompanying Krishna on this trip? Who was her father? Satyajit, yes. So he, all off, please. Yeah, very good, thank you. Yes, Satyajit gave Satyabhama to Lord Krishna after his misadventure with the Shamantaka jewel. So Satyabhama she was tough. She was of Kshatriya nature, so she went along for the battle in this case. Chapter 59, the killing of the demon Naraka. Said King Parikshit to Bhauma, who was causing all this strife. They found his kingdom fully ringed by sharply slicing wire, a slew of deadly weapons, and a moat of blazing fire. Lord Krishna's spinning disc broke up the moat and doused the fire. Lord Krishna's shining sword sliced through the labyrinthine wire. Lord Krishna's arrows caused the demon's weaponry to fall, allowing Krishna's club to smash the daunting fortress walls. When Krishna blew his victory conch, he broke the magic spell protecting Bhauma's fort and all his soldiers' hearts as well. It also roused a sleeping beast of 5 ferocious heads named Mura, who had made the fortress moat his waterbed. The horrible Mura blazed brighter than the sun. His 5 massive mouths roared and frightened everyone. Like venom, some poisonous snake reared back and spat. His trident flew straight at Garuda's feathered back. Lord Krishna's first arrows broke up the trident's flight. His next arrows struck Mura's faces, left and right. The furious demon then hurled his deadly club, expecting to leave his foe crushed and streaming blood. Lord Krishna blew through his club, abruptly smashing both. Then Mura, upset, raised his arms and screamed an oath. He rushed at his foe to destroy him with his fists, but Krishna lopped off his 5 heads with his sharp disc. Deprived of its heads, Mura's corpse splashed in the moat, as hilltops are felled by Lord Indra's thunderbolt. His 7 sons joined in their father's failed assault, till Krishna's sharp arrows brought that fight to a halt. On seeing his guardians thoroughly destroyed, the demon Bhauma, furious, instantly deployed his elephant soldiers and all his entourage to bury their foe in an unrestrained barrage. Garuda flew Krishna and Satyabhama high. They looked like a cloud bank with lightning in the sky. Lord Krishna rained arrows on Bhauma's vicious troops. Their pierced limbs and mounts made the field a bloody soup. Garuda swooped down on the elephant array, and using his talons drove all of them away. His elephant army destroyed and overthrown, the demon Bhauma stood before Krishna all alone. When Bhauma's sharp spear struck Garuda harmlessly, it looked like an elephant being beaten with a wreath. As frustrated Bhauma prepared his trident next, Lord Krishna's sharp chakra went sailing through his neck. The gem-studded head of the demon hit the ground. The god showered flowers and made triumphant sounds. The goddess of earth, Bhumi, brought the stolen goods, gave gifts, and said prayers to Lord Krishna as she stood. This was his mother, correct? She was very accepting of Krishna's dealings with her son. Respects to you, my Lord, who dwells in every single heart. You bring your disc to help like this. You play so many parts. Primeval, all-pervading one, creator, absolute. My boundless Lord, I offer my obeisances to you. The lotus-like depression on your abdomen adorns the lovely lotus garland Krishna draped about your form. Your cooling lotus glances make the imagery complete, including all the lotus marks embellishing your feet. Does anyone recognize this verse from elsewhere in Srimad Bhagvatam? It's the same. It's the same prayer. Yes, of Kunti Devi. You craft the mode of passion when you bring about creation, and then the mode of ignorance when you want devastation. As everything's maintainer and enjoyer, you are linked to all of your creation, yet you're separate and distinct. Illusion makes us think that water, fire, earth, and air, the mind and senses, gods, and all of which we are aware are independent, separate units standing on their own. In fact, they are within you and belong to you alone. I gave birth to this Boma, yet his sins disgusted me. My Lord, here is his son, who has been frightened terribly. Please place your lotus hand, which conquers sin, upon his head. Protect him, please, for you can shelter those beset with dread. Content with Bhumi's humble prayers, Krishna blessed the boy. He then entered the palace evil Balma had enjoyed. Besides the demon's treasures, jewels, silks, and other things, were many kidnapped maidens, all the daughters of great kings. These 16,100 princesses concurred. The handsome man who freed them was the one they wished to serve. May Providence allow this man to marry me, they prayed, as each one thought of Krishna in her own distinctive way. The Lord provided every princess spotless new attire and sent them all to Dwaraka, fulfilling their desire. He also sent off horses, treasure, elephants, and such that Boma had collected, and indeed he'd stolen much. With this encounter finished, Krishna took his wife and left to take back to the heavens all the gods had lost to theft. When Satyabhama asked him for a parijata tree that Indra grew in heaven, Krishna instantly agreed. The most exquisite flowers issued from this famous tree, but Indra said, "It's mine," so Krishna took it forcefully. Although he'd gained Lord Krishna's help and bowed to him as well, this Indra was ungrateful. May his riches go to hell. So a little purport from Shukadeva Goswami. Every once in a while, he just gets emotionally involved and has to express his view. Lord Krishna, back in Dwaraka, assumed a separate form for each and every princess. When their weddings were performed, each one had her own palace too. What ordinary man could even dream of doing things that God, Lord Krishna, can? Extraordinary Krishna, who cannot be understood, led household life with every wife as any husband would. His smiling, joking wives exchanged with him a mood of love that left Brahma and other gods bewildered up above. 100 servants waited, but the queens had such a taste to rub their husband's feet or cool his head with sandal paste or dress his hair or bring him garlands, gifts, and pan to chew that all the servants had to find some other work to do. The exact same verse is also present about 25 chapters ahead in another description of Krishna's palatial life. Jai. So that ends chapter 59 of the 10th canto. That brings us here to chapter 60, how Krishna teases Queen Rukmini. So, can we put this verse up on the board now? Yeah, thank you so much. So we read yesterday in the chapter summary how Krishna gives all of these reasons. We turn on the lights. Oh, it's still better probably this way. Yeah, okay. How Krishna gave all of these reasons why Rukmini should never have married him. And he wanted to get her mad, but instead he got her quite bewildered. So this next verse continues to set the scene. Shukadeva Goswami is speaking. Yastvaila lilaya vishvam Srijat yat yavatishvaraha Ishvaraha Sahijata swasetunam Gopitaya Yadushvajaha Yastreta Lilaya Vishvam Srijat Atyavatishwaraha Sahijata Swasetunam Gopinath Gopitaya Yadushvajaha Dushvajaha. Please chant. Yastreta Lilaya Vishvam Vijat Yatavishwara Sahijata Swasetunam Gopitaya Yadushjaja Srijat Yavatishwaraha Sahijata Swasetunam Gopitaya Yadushjaja. Anyone else like to chant? Yastreta Shvam Ishvaraha Sahijata Swasetunam Gopitaya Yadushjaja. Anyone else? Anyone else like to chant? Ishvara Tunam Taya. Mataji, would you like to chant? Yastreta Lilaya Vishvam Srijat Yavatishvara Sahijata Sasvetunam Gopitaya Yadushvajaha Yaha Who To and Etat This Lilaya as his play Vishvam Universe Srijati sends forth Ati devours Avati protects Ishwaraha the Supreme Controller Saha he indeed Jataha born Sva his own Setunam of the laws Gopitaya for the protection Yadushu among the Yadus Ajaha the unborn Lord. Translation together, please. The unborn personality of Godhead, the supreme controller, who creates, maintains, and then devours this universe, simply as his play, took birth among the Yadus to preserve his own laws. Purport. As stated in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagvatam, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam, religion is the law established by God. The word setu means a boundary or limit, as in the case of a dike. Earth is raised up on both sides of a river or canal so that the water will not deviate from its proper path. Similarly, God establishes laws so that people who follow them can peacefully progress along the path back home, back to Godhead. These laws, which are meant to guide human behavior, are thus called setu. A further note on the word setu. Earth that is raised up to separate agricultural fields or to form a causeway or bridge is also called setu. Thus, in the 9th canto of Bhagvatam, the 9th canto uses the word setu to indicate the bridge Lord Ram built to Sri Lanka. Since the laws of God act as a bridge to take us from the material life to liberated spiritual life, this additional sense of the word setu certainly enriches its use here. Okay. We'll go ahead and read the next section of verses, which is descriptive. Let's read the translation, please. Queen Rukmini's quarters were extremely beautiful, boasting a canopy hung with brilliant strings of pearls, as well as effulgent jewels serving as lamps. Garlands of jasmine and other flowers hung here and there, attracting swarms of humming bees, and the spotless rays of the moon shone through the holes on the lattice windows. As Uguru incense drifted out of the window holes, my dear king, the breeze, wafting the scent of Parijata grove, carried the mood of a garden into the room. There, the queen served her husband, the supreme lord of all the worlds, as he reclined upon an opulent pillow on her bed, which was as soft and white as the foam of milk. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, Rukmini's palace was quite famous then, as now, and these descriptions give a glimpse into its opulence. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti adds that the word amalai in this verse may also be read arunai, which would indicate that when this pastime took place, the moon had just risen, bathing the entire palace in beautiful, ruddy moonshine. So this sets the stage for our coming verses tomorrow. The unborn personality of Godhead, the supreme controller who creates, maintains, and then devours this universe simply as his play, took birth among the Yadus to preserve his own laws. So this verse is reminiscent, of course, of chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, a verse everybody who's ever watched Mahabharata knows. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata bhutana adharmasya. Whenever and wherever there's decline in religious practice and a rise in irreligion, at that time I descend. And why does Krishna say he descends? Ajopi paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. In order to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, I advent myself millennium after millennium. So this is Krishna's purpose in coming. Although he is already creating, maintaining, and destroying everything, he still comes to help his devotees and to remove the influence of the non-devotees. This is a perpetual seva for Krishna, for his devotees, because the nature of the material world is such that the conditioned souls tend towards the demoniac mentality of enjoying and exploiting material nature. So how do we understand Krishna's purpose like this? As God, he could simply get rid of the miscreants altogether. He could simply eliminate them all. In fact, he does this at certain times, like with the Kalki avatar, when there's no chance of the living entities using their free will to voluntarily return to him. Just need a reboot and a reset. But otherwise, Krishna is coming to display his pastimes and attract those who have sufficient intelligence. Yajanti hi sumedha saha, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has done, to attract those whose intelligence is sufficiently developed to help them understand, to allow them to understand that this material world is just a bad deal. Try to enjoy material life. As Srila Prabhupada said, you've been trying to satisfy your senses for so many births. Are they satisfied? Okay. So that only a very foolish person would continue to do something which hasn't worked and yet try it again and again. According to Einstein, that's the definition of insanity, to do the same thing and expect a different result. Do the same thing, but something different. So I've been trying to enjoy my senses. I'm frustrated, but this time it'll be different. Just like Jarasandha, when he was attacking Krishna with this huge army. He was defeated every time. But somehow when he came back, defeated, Krishna would he'd kill all the soldiers and then let him go. And Jarasandha would come back and his ministers would say, oh, it was just bad luck. The wind was unfavorable. Some destiny had to play out, but this time for sure. So again, he attacked and attacked. And in this way, the Lord was fulfilling his mission. Vinashaya Chaduskritam, very efficiently, Jarasandha was bringing all the duskritas for him to eliminate. So in this way, Krishna accomplishes so many things with his pastimes. So this is the big question for those in spiritual life. How do we understand what is Dharma? How do we understand what is Krishna's desire? How do we understand what Krishna wants us to do? We are willing to do anything Krishna wants, right? Whatever Krishna wants. Krishna, whatever you say, I'm willing to do. This is the mood of a devotee, the point of surrender to which we have all come in our lives. Krishna, whatever you desire. So how do we know what Krishna wants? Guru Sadhu Shastra, okay? Guru Sadhu Shastra. Yes, this is the threefold test. And this sets Vaishnava knowledge aside from all kinds of scientific knowledge. Many of you have studied engineering, science in school. Tell me, did you ever hear Guru Shastra Sadhu in your studies? Did you ever hear that this person is a perfect source of all knowledge on engineering? Did you ever hear this book is absolutely infallible on the subject of engineering? And did you ever hear, oh, this latest paper by this engineer is setting the standard? And did you ever see them agree? You see? No, everybody in science is trying to get to the top of the heap. If you make a thesis for your master's or PhD, your doctorate, and you just say in the thesis, I totally accept what this previous expert has said. Everything he said is perfect. I completely accept. Will they accept your thesis? No, you have to make a new contribution to knowledge, right? A fresh speculation. Hot from the oven, right? So there is no Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu in mundane fields of science. That's why the spiritual science is so unique. Because Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu must comply. But what happens if your interpretation of Shastra is different than mine? And we both go to Prabhupada's, to the Veda base, and we find quotes from Prabhupada to support both sides. What do we do? Does anyone know what this kind of study is called? Hermeneutics, right? So hermeneutics means that we will expect to see different understandings or interpretations of Scripture. Hermeneutics does not mean we will determine which one is right. It simply means it is to be expected. In the Christian lexicon, there's a little poem. Both read Bible day and night. You read black and I read white. Different interpretations, different understandings. Hermeneutics means to study very systematically which interpretation may be more valid, but at least what is the validity behind each one. It's not meant to determine which is better, it's meant to determine is there validity behind each interpretation of Scripture. So this is the difficulty with Shastra. This is the difficulty with Guru. And this is the difficulty with Sadhu also, that there are going to be different understandings and interpretations and presentations of the same absolute truth. But you remember how we were discussing yesterday how Krishna is so unlimited. Unlimited, countless living entities each have a unique way to please him. So similarly, there can be different understandings of Guru, Shastra, Sadhu. Are there limits on them? Yes, there are. What is that limit? Well, if we're in the Sangha of ISKCON, what is the ultimate arbiter of knowledge? What? Specifically in ISKCON, huh? Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is going to be the ultimate arbiter. So at least one must be able to substantiate one's position from Prabhupada Vani, confirmed. Srila Prabhupada was perhaps the most, or certainly one of the most studied, recorded figures in religious history, in all of religious history, ever. Like the whole Bible, for example, is just based on a few secondhand reports of what Jesus said. Nothing is in writing. Right? And those accounts, by the way, contradict each other in various ways. Similarly, in Islam, I visited a mosque once and spoke with the Imam about the Quran. And he was explaining that if you want to understand Quran, you need to learn Arabic. You have to be able to read it for yourself because everyone will have a different interpretation and a different understanding. There is no central interpretation. That was his advice. If you really want to understand Quran, you have to read it yourself and draw your own conclusions. It reminded me of Hinduism. It said there are 800 million Hindus and 800 million varieties of Hinduism. But the recorded words of Prabhupada, the biographies, the first-hand accounts, and most importantly, his purports, his letters, his recorded lectures, such a huge, huge volume of Prabhupada Vani that we have to draw from. So I was speaking with a scholar friend about this once, and he was saying that, yes, this is a great strength of the Hare Krishna movement. You have this incredibly rich reference from your founder Acharya. And this is the great weakness of the Hare Krishna movement, that you have this incredibly rich resource of all the words of your founder Acharya. Why? Because if he says one thing over here and one thing over here, everything is confused. There was an instance in Vrindavan years ago, just after the Krishna Balaram Mandir had opened. There was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada named Akshayananda Swami, who was very scholarly, very proper type of person, very academically gifted, knew the Shastra well. He was the president of the temple. Then another one of Prabhupada's disciples named Hansadutta had just taken sannyas. He was a very fiery individual. He came to Vrindavan and started leading fiery kirtans and giving fiery classes. And all the devotees started thinking he'd make a much better president than Akshayananda Swami. So some of them, somehow this came to Prabhupada's attention. He called Akshayananda and Hansadutta to his room, sat them down. And first he turned to Hansadutta and said, "You've taken sannyas, you're staying here in Vrindavan. Why are you sitting here in Vrindavan? Sannyas means traveling and preaching. You should go out and be preaching in the villages. Go." And then he turned to Akshayananda and said, "And you stay here and manage Vrindavan." So, completely contradictory instructions for these two sannyasis, right? Everybody laughed because it was so amusing how Prabhupada could do this without a moment's hesitation. But this is what it means to be the founder Acharya. That if we're in this institution, he is our founder Acharya, and what he says is the final word. So again, there's an argument to be made both ways for this dharma for a sannyas and this dharma for a sannyas. What is the ultimate arbiter? It's the order of the spiritual master. That's how we understand Shastra. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The rules come from God, but Mahajana yena gatasa panta. It is by the Mahajans that we understand how to apply them. See? What this requires of us in our Sangha is an open heart and an open mind, and a willingness to understand that different devotees will see things in different ways. What hurts our Sangha is if we say, my interpretation is right and yours is wrong. It's fine to say, I don't agree with your interpretation, I don't follow your interpretation, but it is going too far to say you are not entitled to your interpretation. You understand? Then we can have unity and diversity. There are 5 levels of consensus, and the first being we all agree 100%. a rarely achieved feat in Kali Yuga. The fourth level is, I don't agree with you, but I will tolerate your interpretation. The fifth level is, I will not tolerate your interpretation, which is no consensus at all. So if we descend to that fifth level, then we have failed Prabhupada's principal order to cooperate after his departure, you see? So this means that there has to be a little humility. If one is so arrogant that one thinks only my way is the right way, then there will be no unity. There'll be no unity and diversity. If one thinks, unless you accept my way, there is no, you're not following Shastra, you're not following Prabhupada, you're not following Sadhu. That kind of mentality, that kind of speech is very offensive to Srila Prabhupada. It's just making Prabhupada, wanting to make him so limited that he fits inside my particular little locket. I've got Prabhupada in my pocket, and whatever I say is therefore as good as what Prabhupada said, you see. So sometimes people say, very offensively, that, oh yes, Shastra is more important than Prabhupada. Shastra is more important than Prabhupada. They say, we don't want to make ISKCON a personality cult just going around, revolving around Prabhupada. Have you ever heard this? So that is, it's very offensive to Srila Prabhupada, very limiting to Prabhupada, trying to put him in the box. My interpretation of Shastra is absolute. See? What is the highest principle? Right? The highest principle of bhakti. Anyone like to say? To remember Krishna and never forget. Okay. Others? Satisfaction of the spiritual master. Okay. Yes. Yes. Follow the instruction of the guru. That's ultimately the active principle. Yes. Remembering Krishna is important. Following the order of the guru, though, is the ultimate principle. Compassion towards others. These are symptoms of following the orders of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is this Kripa Sindhu, the ocean of mercy. And the spiritual, look how Srila Prabhupada was so accepting. He did what no one else could do because he was so broad-minded. He was willing to take people where they were and elevate them to Krishna consciousness, as opposed to saying, oh, you're not on my standard of bhakti, or you're not on my standard of Vedanta knowledge, then I cannot accept you. Come back when you're eligible, you see. In other words, it is the mission of the spiritual master that we want to understand. And it is the mood of the spiritual master that we want to understand. And in ISKCON, that's Prabhupada. Prabhupada's bold trip to the West violated a Vedic injunction, right? The sannyasi should never cross the ocean. Why? Because you're taking a great risk to die outside of the Holy Land. But Prabhupada did that. Why? Because it was a higher principle. Prabhupada, it's a Vedic tradition that women should not live in ashrams. But when Prabhupada came to America, he saw that the boys and girls were very accustomed to an intergender, co-educational environment. So he created brahmacharini ashrams. That works in the West. It doesn't work in India, but it works in the West. Prabhupada made so many innovations according to time and circumstance. That's the mood of the spiritual master. If we want to satisfy Prabhupada, if we want to follow the spiritual master, the founder Acharya, we need to do those things that actually spread the Sankirtan movement. There are so many rules and regulations in the Shastra. It said that if your rules and regulations fail to bring you to devotion, then what is the use of your rules and regulations? On the other hand, if you have devotion, what is the need of the rules and regulations? Rupa Goswami said it like this: Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna naveshaya. somehow or other think of Krishna, the rules and regulations can come later. Somehow or other think of Krishna, the rules and regulations came later. Because Srila Prabhupada was willing to put that sloka into action, he was successful. He did not require people to come to a great standard before they chanted the Maha Mantra. So this is how we please Prabhupada. This is how we follow Prabhupada. By being tolerant of one another's points of view, and accepting and accommodating and appreciating. By understanding that hermeneutically there are going to be different views on the Shastra. Giriraj Maharaj tells a story of Srila Prabhupada. How did it go? Two disciples were arguing. Get the exact dispute. It was something to the effect of like, who is more important? Something to this effect. I'll paraphrase. Krishna or Balaram? Okay. So they were arguing about Krishna and Balaram's position. And they came to Prabhupada and said, one of the devotees came, Prabhupada, they're having this debate saying that Balaram is stronger than Krishna. Something to that effect. Prabhupada said, oh, well, they are right. But Prabhupada, the other devotee, says that Krishna is stronger than Balaram. Gave some evidence. Oh, she's right. But Prabhupada, I don't understand. How can they both be right? Prabhupada said, you're right. So, all contradictions are resolved within the absolute truth. See, for Krishna, there is no contradiction. Like atheists like to make the argument, can God make a mountain that's so heavy he can't lift it? They think they got you, right? Can he make a mountain that's so heavy he can't lift it? Yes. Prabhupada heard that. He said, yes. And then he can lift it. So even Krishna is constantly overwhelmed by Krishna's glories. They are ever expanding and ever increasing. And he marvels at them. So how can we try to put Krishna in our little box? Oh, I've got Krishna. This is actually what makes devotees have difficulty in spiritual life. When we think, I understand bhakti, okay, I understand ISKCON, I understand Prabhupada, I understand the Bhagavad Gita. I've got it all in my pocket. Thank you very much. Now I can go on with my life. And I'll use it when it pleases me, and I'll set it aside when it doesn't. So this kind of failure to understand the awesome position of Srila Prabhupada as Krishna's dearmost deputy, it causes us to create offenses and commit offenses. And then when we commit offenses, what happens? We commit offenses to devotees. What is the symptom of that? Anyone know? We lose our taste. Our taste for bhakti is our salary, our compensation, our pension program, our fringe benefits, all of our chanting, all of our seva. It is done just to gain a little taste. Turdaivam idvishami hajani nanuraga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is lamenting himself. I don't have taste for the name. How many of us experience that? Wishing, why don't I have more taste for chanting or reading or whatever process of bhakti it may be? Often it's because we are still committing an offense. But if we dramatically lose our taste altogether, then we know it is an offense. Then we know we have offended some devotee. So Krishna forgives us for our offenses. Once, twice, but thrice. We cannot expect to continue to have the privilege of devotional service if we continually commit offenses. So if we're losing our taste, we should ask, have I made some aparad? Have I committed some offense? And again, this relates back to the earlier point. When we're so sure that our position is right, that we dismiss another devotee, we talk down to another devotee, we denigrate another devotee, then the result of that is our taste will dwindle. So we have to be able to recognize, okay, you're a sincere devotee, you have this interpretation. I don't agree with it. It's wrong, but I accept you. I can accommodate you having it, even though I don't agree. You see. Then we can have a growing taste because we'll avoid offending devotees. So here in the 10th canto, you've worked your way up to the 10th canto here, you know, verse by verse. It must have taken years, huh? 10 years? It takes about 15 years, I understand, to do the whole Bhagvatam in a verse by verse way. A big commitment. Anyway, somehow or other, we're here in the 10th canto, which is the essence of the whole thing. And we're hearing Krishna's pastimes and the association of devotees. What a great privilege. What a great privilege. What a great privilege to be able to immerse ourselves in the Sankirtan movement in the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the grace of Srila Prabhupada. You know, Srila Prabhupada said, you should be a jack of all trades. You should know everything in the Sankirtan panorama. A little how to cook, a little how to lead kirtan, a little how to speak, a little how to counsel, a little how to clean, a little how to do deity worship. All these things you know a little bit. Be a jack of all trades, but be a master of one. Find one thing that you really want to do for Krishna. This is our challenge in devotional service. And it takes time, and there's no rush, and it's good to have a variety of experiences before making that decision. One disciple came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, what do you want me to do for Krishna? And Prabhupada said, what do you want to do for Krishna? Anything you say, Prabhupada, anything you say. He said, no, I asked you, what do you want to do for Krishna? He was challenging his disciple in this way. What is your particular thing that you want to do? Do you want to be a wondering generality in devotional service or a meaningful specific? So again, in this devotee's case, he said, well, Prabhupada, all these madangas we're bringing from India break so easily. I'd like to make a madanga out of fiberglass that won't break. So Prabhupada said, do it. That was how the Balaram madanga was invented. So the point is that part of our self-realization is finding out what is that unique way we have to please Krishna. Actually, that's our whole self-realization. What is that unique way we have to please Krishna? And nobody can tell us what it is. We have to discover it for ourselves over time. So the spiritual master will see our propensities, try to engage us accordingly. But in the long run, Prabhupada said this beautiful story. He was asked, what would your mother say if she saw you here today? Your mother, if she saw you today, leading a worldwide movement, sannyasi, what would she say? Prabhupada said, she would simply be glad to see that I am still alive. So similarly, our spiritual masters simply want us to see that we stay in Krishna consciousness. We just stay alive. Right? Tatenu kampam susamikshamano bunjane vatmakritam vipaga. Hridvag vapavir viditam namaste jivite mukti pade sadayava. If we undergo difficulties and continue anyway, accepting a responsibility as these difficulties have come from my own past mistakes. And despite the difficulties, we continue undaunted. And during that service, we call out to Krishna from the core of our hearts. That way we can stay alive in Krishna consciousness. And we simply stay alive, what do we become eligible for? The Mukti Pade, the kingdom of God. Yeah, Sarvabhauma did not like that phrase. But Chaitanya said, no, you can't change. We become eligible to end the sojourn in this world of birth and death, to end the experiences of our unwanted karmic reactions, and to end all of the tears and suffering that have accompanied us for so many lifetimes. This is the gift Srila Prabhupada is giving us. So following his footsteps, Mahajana Yena Gatasa Panta, this is the highest understanding of the laws of Krishna that he comes to establish. Mahajana Yena Gatasa Panta. Everyone is disagreeing on the details of Scripture, so we have to follow the Mahajans. And our Mahajan is Srila Prabhupada. right, thank you very much. Let's stop there. We have a few minutes now. Any reflections? Any dissenting opinions or views that I can lacerate? No, just kidding. Go ahead, Prabhu. Your good name, Prabhu?
Ananta Gaur Sundar Das.
Ananta?
Gaur Sundar.
Gaur Sundar. Oh, nice to meet you. Very well.
This, like you spoke that things have to be in the realm of what Prabhupada spoke. So certainly with the heart, I understand it, but intellectually, I get to hear, or I have some other things which really challenge it. So there are certain pastimes, like one of the devotees, Prabhupada disciples, actually Japataka Maharaj, he was telling that he was chanting very loudly, and so many devotees are getting disturbed. So then devotees went and complained to Prabhupada that he's chanting so loudly that we can't hear our own chanting. We are getting purified by his chanting. So Prabhupada told him that you should not chant very loudly. So then he showed it from a book. That Prabhupada here it says that if you have a wandering mind, you should chant very, very loudly. And then Prabhupada said, yes, then you can go and chant in the park, but not in the temple hall.
Yes, so practical.
So the only thing which comes in my mind is that even Prabhupada was pretty open when we would show the scriptures.
Yeah.
And then he would say, he would accommodate the things.
Yes.
So when now Prabhupada is not there and we have Prabhupada Vani, but now we find certain things which are like in the scriptures, but they may not exactly match with what Prabhupada Vani is there.
Yes.
So then how do we reconcile?
Therefore, we have Trinadapi Sunichena. We have to accept that there will be differing points of view on things. And yet we're together on the big things. This is the point. There was two disciples in Los Angeles, 1973, I believe. They came to Srila Prabhupada. They had been going out on college preaching. And they said, Prabhupada, we show them the Krishna book, the last chapter. There's a description of Maharaj Ugrasen in the Yadu dynasty. And Krishna had so many children, and his children had so many children, and Maharaj Ugrasen had to employ so many teachers to teach them. You remember this section? So if you do the math, it works out to the billions and trillions of people. So they said, Prabhupada, the scholars see this and they laugh and they say, where did they put the bathrooms? So Prabhupada said, just show them another section of Srimad Bhagvatam that they can understand. And they said, but Prabhupada, how do we explain this to them? And Prabhupada again said, simply introduce them to another section that they can understand. But Prabhupada, this is like physically impossible. How do we explain? Prabhupada said, you do not require spiritual master. The only time Prabhupada basically dismissed disciples because they could not hear his instruction. You see? So this is the mentality we need to avoid. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. I'll go on with my way, you go on with your way. At least that fourth level of consensus. I don't agree with you, but I respect you. I will tolerate your view. You tolerate my view. Then we will have unity in diversity. We'll serve Prabhupada according to our respective realizations. So you see? So we can't just take one moment or one statement and say this is everything. Hermeneutics means we find corresponding references, not just one. We take the context and time and place in consideration. But in the long run, we have differences. We still come together in kirtan. We still want to spread the Sankirtan movement, like you see. So just you can be sure and expect there will be contradictions. Only for the person who doesn't have implicit faith will that be an issue. You understand? These devotees lacking implicit faith, they could not remain in Prabhupada's service.
Can I further ask? Further, can I ask the question?
It's all right with me, sure. There's others, but go ahead. I'll try to make it brief.
We find it's not just like few things. Nowadays, we find a lot of things happening like that, and devotees have quite a good amount of differences on what Prabhupada spoke and what is given in the scriptures. For example, let us say this emphasis on Chaturmas, 4 months. So now certain devotees say that Prabhupada never emphasized on this so much, we don't have to do it. And there are good amount of devotees who really find it, do it so strictly. So when it comes to like a person who is in charge of a particular center and he wants to do it, so then what should be his consideration? Because
Well, yeah, that's a very good example. So first of all, Rupa Goswami says you should never mention 4 things. In the ISKCON Disciples course, this is one of the first lessons. Anyone remember these 4 things? Your mantra, your guru, japa, and your ishtade. So, what's that? Did I miss something? No. Okay. So anyway, the point is that if somebody wants to observe Chaturmasya, that's their vow, then they should be able to do that. There's certainly ample references in Prabhupada's books. And if somebody doesn't want to observe it, there are also ample references in Prabhupada's life that he didn't observe and he didn't require it to be observed. So if the temple and the community is functional, there'll be room for both opinions. But the person who's observing should remember this injunction from Rupa Goswami, right? Not that going around like with a t-shirt. I'm observing Chaturmasya. How about you? You understand? Very silently, one keeps one's vow. Doesn't boast about it, doesn't promote it. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Prabhuji, a small doubt that when we preach our convictions. When whatever we have inside, whatever ideologies we carry, we preach according to that. So considering what you had spoken today just now, I mean, how should we preach? Because should we impose our ideologies on others, or how it is? Because generally, now the new person is like a clay. You can say the way you shape, the way he modifies. So how would he should be trained, let's say, without imposing mind?
How did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preach to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya?
He heard for a long time, then given the proper interpretation.
So if we take the time to understand the person we're preaching to, then that question answers itself. It is not one size fits all. Again, this is the very limited mentality. I have absolute truth. I have all the knowledge. I'll tell you, and regardless of whether you want to hear it or not, regardless of whatever I don't care. I have the truth. Sit down and listen. You see, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj writes that the principles of religion are established not by logic and debate, but by what? Anyone know? Remember this reference? By the behavior of the devotees. Right? So what kind of person do we like to meet? A person who has the absolute truth and is going to tell us about it? Or a person who wants to understand us? What's your name? Where are you from? What are you suffering from? What problems are you having in life? How can we help you? Like that, you see? That works. That works. Particularly, so you have a great advantage here in preaching in India, because your audience is very familiar, at least to a certain extent, with the principles you're introducing. Even here, it works well. You want to understand. If we look at Prabhupada's preaching, he would often do this, talk about people, ask them, so he would understand how to present Krishna consciousness. In the West, it's a must. If you want to bring people to Krishna consciousness, you have to take time to understand them. And there's a saying in Baptist church, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. All right?
I mean, one more small extending question there. The person who presents Bhagavatam class sitting on the Vyasasana, I mean, should he again the same similar thing when he gives a audience which are open public? So is it the same thing we have to follow? I mean, because we present our thoughts, our opinions, our ideologies.
And these are two different venues. If we're talking to people one-on-one, that calls for one sort of approach. If we're asked to give a formal class, that's another kind of approach. Okay. My friend Mahatma Prabhu does a lot of counseling, and he says you can't solve problems by throwing slokas at them. You have to hear people out and be a little nuanced. So, in the class, on the other hand, you have to refer to slokas. Otherwise, what is the value of the class? It's a scriptural study. All right. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Yes, Prabhu. Oh, I'll tell you what. He's back there. This Prabhu, Vimal, is that right? Okay. And then.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for this class. Prabhu, I came across a questionnaire in which there was a question that how do you see Srila Prabhupada teachings? So the question was, when Srila Prabhupada is speaking about a spiritual subject matter, I accept everything as truth. Then second option was that Srila Prabhupada is completely correct, in terms of his spiritual subject matter, but in terms of material subjects, he may not be true. So I was little confused over this question. So how do we accept?
Right. Srila Prabhupada was asked this question directly by 𝐂𝐻𝐌𝐌𝐍 Swami. And he said, no. Spiritual master does not mean materially perfect. Spiritually, yes, because the spiritual master is repeating the message of the parampara. So spiritually it's perfect, but materially, no. That's a neophyte misconception. Everything my guru does is perfect. Okay? Krishna acts through pure devotees. The more we are surrendered to Krishna, the more Krishna acts through us. So we can see much in the life of Srila Prabhupada how Krishna acted through him in so many ways and guided him to make decisions that were so successful. But then Prabhupada made other decisions that didn't work, and he just left them and moved on. You see? He was not do you call like OCD? No, it has to be exactly this way. He was, all right, try this. If it doesn't work, we'll try that. First, he tried giving lectures here and there, and that didn't work. So he got a storefront, and then he gave lectures there, and that began to work. And they gradually developed. This is, common sense. Okay, but materially, if he had stuck with giving lectures here and there, no, I have to do this until it works, where would we be? You see? Okay. Yes, Prabhu? Your good name, Prabhuji? Your good name? Hariom. Haribo. I don't think it's on.
For a new person, just by reading the scriptures, it becomes difficult to ascertain the truth, what he's supposed to do. So generally, he follows some very senior person. Now, when we see that even the two very senior persons are having the opposite opinions, then it becomes very confusing and disturbing to the mind.
Yes.
So in that condition, is it a proper attitude that let me expose ourselves to only one person and not here to many persons? Otherwise, it is simply disturbing. So it is a proper attitude or it is proper thing to do?
Yes, it is. First of all, though, let's back up a little. Because the big things we all agree upon. We all agree upon the 4 regulator principles. We all agree upon 16 rounds if we're pursuing initiation in ISKCON. Why? Because it comes from the founder Acharya, right? So the big things we agree upon, that's important to recognize. So if a newcomer wants a mentor and sees 2 senior devotees have disagreements on things, well, the newcomer then is challenged to make a decision, but not a judgmental decision. This person's right, this person's wrong. Rather, this person's perspective appeals to me more, right? This appeals to me more. So therefore, I'm going to follow this person. I'm going to take more intimate instruction from this person. I'm not going to disrespect this other person. I'm just going to be more confidential, right? Guyam akyati prichchati. This is the meaning of Siksha. We take instruction from a Siksha guru who inspires us, but it's not limited. Many Siksha gurus. This principle about Rupa Goswami saying you should not say the name of your guru, isn't that shocking? You shouldn't say the name of your guru. Do you know why you shouldn't say the name of your guru? What? You should not discuss? No, we should not say it at all. That's what it says. You should not say the name of your guru. Do you know why? What's the first question everybody asks you in ISKCON? What's your name? And then? Who's your guru, right? I mean, isn't it? So, first lesson in the disciples course, don't say the name of your guru. First question in ISKCON, who's your guru? The reason that injunction is there, very simple reason, that if you say the name of your guru, then two things happen. First, the person you're saying it to will judge you based on your guru. You see? They won't judge you on who you are. Immediately, they'll think, okay, well, I like this guru, I don't like this guru, so I like this person, I don't like this person. I don't even know this person, but I don't like their guru. You follow? So the other thing, the reason why you're not supposed to say the name is very simple, that a devotee feels so fallen that I don't want anyone to know that I don't want to embarrass my guru by having people know he accepted somebody like me as a disciple. It's an expression of humility. So therefore, when people ask you, who is your guru, you know what you can say? I have many gurus. I have many gurus. If they really want to drill down, well, is your guru in ISKCON? Yes, he's in ISKCON. Yes, he's in good standing. But I don't want to embarrass him by saying his name and having you realize that he would accept that the person as lowly as I am. Okay. So it's a very personal matter from whom we take Siksha and from whom we take Diksha for that matter. We should not take Diksha just to try to borrow some prestige from a respected guru. We should find those who can give us instruction that is meaningful. A good barometer is to look at a person's life and say, do I want to turn out like this person? Emotionally, mentally, socially, is this person someone I can emulate? But what happens to all of us, happened to me many times in my life as a devotee. I've emulated somebody, I've really confided in somebody, and then in the long run I felt disappointed in this person. It happens. It's part of the test we have to go through. And even we may take Diksha from somebody and then later develop more faith in somebody else. That's all right. There are many gurus. So we all, the 11th canto explains that every devotee needs these three relationships in their life: a superior, with peers, and with students. That's a balanced spiritual life. We need a relationship with a superior so that we can be instructed and we can be improved. We need relationships with peers so that we can be friends and we can reveal our minds and confidence and learn from one another. And then we need students because we need to develop compassion and share what we have learned. Like Devaki was compared to a fire in a pot when she was imprisoned in Kamsa's cell. And that's analogous to a wise man who has knowledge but doesn't share it. So these three things are required for spiritual health and balance. So we always need a mentor. If we get to a point where we think we know things so well we don't need a mentor, that's when we need a mentor. Okay? Anything else?
Thank you for the class. So there are big things you mentioned, that the big things they are like everyone agrees upon. So now if we have different opinions on the small things, then like it may, will it not dilute our, like the Prabhupada was very strict about that, you know, don't misinterpret. In so many purports and lectures Prabhupada mentioned. So it may not lead to that, you know, we dilute big things also in the coming years, because now we are accepting that different interpretations on small things. Gradually it may not come to big things also. So like how do we take care of that?
We need to distinguish between details and principles. Srila Prabhupada said that requires intelligence. So the principles are few. Regulative principles, 16 rounds, Trinadapi Sunichena, Amanina Manadena, few principles. But everything else pretty much is a detail. What ashram we're in, what varna we're in, what kind of service we do, whether we tend to be very strict with the yam and niyam, or we tend to be loose with them. Those are details. But when we elevate a detail to a principle, then there's no question of unity and diversity.
Regarding, can you tell like what should be our opinion regarding preaching? Like if we see that, like you said, that different devotees can do different services, and some devotees may emphasize more on preaching, some devotees may not emphasize so much on preaching. They may emphasize more on developing their own, like, you know, that Prabhupada said that Ghoshtiyanandi and Bhajananandi. So what is the, does it come under a big thing or a small thing? That we should be Ghoshtiyanandi or Bhajananandi? What is?
It's ultimately a detail, although there's a strong disposition towards the Ghoshtiyanandi in our movement. Prabhupada makes that clear. It's much easier to make an argument for that point. Srila Prabhupada was in an elevator in the New York temple years ago, and devotees asked, so Prabhupada, when we're old, can we retire to Mayapur and just chant? Prabhupada said, you may do that. Personally, I'm not advanced enough. I'm not advanced enough. I want to die on the battlefield, he said, like Arjuna. Give me that benediction that I can die on the battlefield like Arjuna. Right, so in general, the Bhajananandi is an outlier in our Sangha because we are a missionary movement. That's why people are so agitated about us. We're not just sitting in the temple and meditating. No, we're going out and knocking on their doors and playing the mridanga in their ears, putting a sweet ball in their mouth. Prabhu, you tell me if we're. You tell me when to stop. Okay. All right. Maybe one last question here. We're over time already. As long as you have questions, okay. Right. And we are resolved every single issue. And we are all in agreement that my point of view is exactly right. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
My pleasure.
So we are so grateful to you that you took out time to come here and bless us yesterday also and today also.
Yes.
Thank you very much for, and today you covered a very, very important topic, which may, you know, haunt us and sometimes disturb us, but how to see it in right light with humility and, you know, and keeping that principle. We are one moment, unity in diversity, keeping Srila Prabhupada in the center and moving forward with our wonderful services. So thank you very much for enlightening class and wonderful question and answer sessions.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So let us thank His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu for giving his valuable last session here to all of us by loudly chanting 3 times.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
And we hope and pray that every year, please do come and bless us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu ki.